The Perfection is one of the newest Netflix original movies. I'm only getting around to it right now. I'm not going to review it normally. I feel like anybody that actually reviews it is doing a disservice to the fans. Go see it blind, completely blind, because any review would probably be spoilerific, including this. Fact of the matter is, the movie is just so confusing that somebody needs to explain what's going on. Thankfully, that's what Deconstructing the Narrative is all about, so if you like this video, make sure that you say so in the comments down below and like it with a thumbs up. And before we start, obviously, spoiler warning! I'm not kidding, guys. Spoiler warning! This movie is confusing, but it's confusing in a smart way. It's confusing on purpose. It wants to really discombobulate your system when you watch it. So let's start with the seed. What is it at the heart of this film that everything and everybody revolves around and can provide perspective to? Well, obviously, it's the titular perfection, the actual event called the perfection. That's what started everything. That's what everything revolves around. Perfection is like a musical number. It's a performance that these girls have to make, and if they aren't absolutely perfect with their perfection, they basically get raped. This, of course, causes the inequity, or maybe the imbalance that the pro-go people feel like they need to resolve. I feel like this foundation, this seed, is specifically written pretty well, and it creates tension for the rest of the film. This is getting full points. Next, we're looking at the protagonist of the movie, which isn't as clear as you might think it is. The function of the protagonist in this movie is basically to resolve the problem or the imbalance that the seed created. From a literary standpoint, the protagonist's goal is to stop the perfection. The only character that actually meets that quota is Lizzie, played by Logan Browning. She specifically is set out to stop everything that's happening. However, this never happens until the second half of the movie, so you feel as if the protagonist is actually Charlotte. But strictly from a literary perspective, the protagonist has to be Lizzie. It has to be Logan Browning's character because she's the only one that's set out for a complete resolution from the problem at hand. But because her story doesn't really start until half the movie's over, and because you don't really understand that until the end, it's kind of wonky, it's kind of unclear. So this gets 1 out of 2 possible stars. Next, we look at the main character of the film. The main character is the heart of the film. This is the character that we see through the eyes of the most, and that would probably be Charlotte. Charlotte we care about and see through the eyes of the most from beginning to end, even though it's a little bit confusing, even though it's mysterious and doesn't tell you all the answers at first. A majority of the film focuses on her character from beginning to end, though it does focus on Lizzie's character as well in the same regards. In most cases, though, a main character has to go through a growth period. It has to believe one thing that's probably wrong, and it has to be influenced one way or another on how to actually believe, and how to behave, and how to see the world. In that instance, the main character has to be Lizzie again. Lizzie's the only one that is persuaded one way or another. Allison Williams' character, on the other hand, feels like an influence character. It feels like her entire role is to tell Lizzie that she's wrong in the way that she's thinking. Charlotte is a literary definition of an influence character, which is weird because the movie focuses on her. That is a majority of where the confusion of this movie lies, because your subconscious is seeing this and you're like, something's not right here. You're not realizing that the protagonist and the main character are Lizzie, and it's not really focusing on her like a normal movie would. So when it doesn't focus on her, you get this kind of wonky feeling that something's wrong, something's amiss, something's out of place, and I think they did that on purpose. It's an interesting direction that they took overall. However, I'm not a huge fan of it because from a literary standpoint, it's super confusing, because what it feels like is the main character is the influence character and vice versa, which can't ever be the case because the influence character influences the main character. It can't be the same person. So once you start to deconstruct everything, you start to realize that Lizzie is the main character and protagonist, she is the literary hero, and that Charlotte is, of course, the influence character and pretty much little else. Charlotte's entire role, basically her entire function, is to tell Lizzie that she's seeing the world wrong. She is brainwashed, she is whatever. And then it's up to Lizzie to either believe her or remain steadfast and believe Steven Weber's character. In this case, her resolve changes. It moves over to Charlotte's point of view, which is fine. Now we look at the antagonist. The antagonist's role is to be diametrically opposed to the protagonist's goal. If the protagonist's goal is to stop the perfection from occurring, the antagonist's role is to stop them from doing that. The antagonist is the most clear character out of the bunch. It is Steven Weber's character. Steven Weber's character is fine. It's pretty standard for an antagonist. He claims that his motivation behind raping women isn't just to be a random perv, but rather to force women to unlock their artistic abilities that they wouldn't be able to do otherwise. The thing is, I don't actually know if he believes that or not, and if he doesn't believe that, his character suddenly becomes a lot weaker than it already was. He plays the antagonist role pretty well, but other than that, it's fine. So at the end of the day, it had a good strong foundation for the seed. It had a good starting point. The protagonist is a little bit weak because we don't know who it is at least until the half point of the movie, and really not until the movie's over. The main character is also kind of weak because of the focus of the film is often on Charlotte's character when it should have been on Lizzie's from a literary standpoint, which also means that the influence character is kind of weak too. And as for the antagonist, it's just standard and typical, nothing that is really amazing, so that is also half points. From a technical standpoint, I gave this 6 out of 10 for the narrative, but it is a very fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's currently standing in my top 2 spot of the year. I haven't seen 2019 movies yet, but it really surprised me, and it might surprise you too, so make sure that you check it out. Tell me what you thought about this movie in the comments down below, and as for YouTube, you know you can subscribe to me, hit that like button, hit the bell to be notified when I come out with my next deconstructing video. Peace out.